Hey guys, it's Josh, Jeff, and Terry, and today we're talking about leadership characteristics. Say hi, guys.
Hi.
Hey, welcome to Leave No Doubt. We are talking about leadership characteristics today, and we're going to go through some of the things that we think are most important. And to get things kicked off, Josh, why don't you start us with one of your top. No, I'm just kidding. Pick on one of you. Josh, which leadership characteristic, I know we listed a bunch out earlier, and which one do you think is one of the most important ones?
That question always gets a lot of people talking about really what is the most. And I know I've gone through, and depending on the day, I'll go back and forth. But I would say that integrity is probably the most critical or the foundation to build on. Without that, everything else is potentially going to be all over the place. You don't have a tried and true mark that you're aiming for.
Yeah. So, when you talk about integrity, can you give us a little bit more of a definition of what you figure is what you feel integrity entails? I know you could probably talk for a long time about different aspects of it, but what do you feel like it means to you?
Yeah, integrity to me is knowing what is right and then having the convictions to do that no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
So it's behind every decision that you make, knowing that there's some sort of linear truth that you've aligned all of your future decisions off of.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah, I think so too. It's like because there's a lot of times that you feel like you have integrity, but then certain situations come up, and especially if you're in a situation where no one else is going to know something, or you have the opportunity to kind of, it's like I know this, I should be doing it this way, but I'll just shortcut it a little bit here. That the integrity really comes in. Really, really importantly, when you're all by yourself, right? And so I think it's a really good way to start that. So, Jeff, do you got any integrity ideas, or you want to move on to it?
I really thought you would say if I had any integrity issues.
Issues.
That's what I thought you were going to ask me for a minute.
We don't have that much time to.
Probably not that much time to go into every integrity.
It's funny you say that. We all have integrity issues, right? Absolutely. We're always working on that, trying to make ourselves be the same person we are. Everywhere with our own personal lives too, right? Trying to create that lower that integrity gap as much as possible.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No.
I said, as we talk about the topic of integrity too, I think it gets missed a lot of times. People talk about it only from an external perspective, right? As to what does my boss at work see? Am I doing my work correctly? Or what do my kids or my wife see when I'm interacting with them? It's a lot of times talked about on an external type manner, is what other people see from that. And I think even one of the more important qualities of integrity is how we manage ourselves and the thoughts that we have, even behind them. Because I even think the external actions come after we can start to work on the internal, knowing we're never perfect, knowing that we all struggle with this. But I think when we start looking at it, I think that's a piece that gets missed on a lot of occasions. It all looks good on the outside, but I know I'm lying to myself on some manner.
Well, and even the perception of how things are going from the outside. Sometimes it's even what is the outcome of the situation that can be almost the means can justify the end. That you can lie to yourself in order to make the right thing happen on the end, but at the end of the day, then you not stay true to who you are and what you know to be right, and that can start to crumble your inner core, which then eventually does come out on the outside.
Yeah, and it's just interesting how easy it is to worry about how you look or how you're appearing to other people versus who you really are on the inside. And when you do that, you have this very fleeting, temporary satisfaction of like, hey, I presented myself in a good light, or people like me. But on the inside, it kills you, right? It eats you up. It's bad for you. It's destructive. Whereas the other way around, when you flip it the other way around, people may not see you the way you would hope they would see you, but you're standing firm to your integrity beliefs, and you feel good about that, right? Mm-hmm. And again, you have that fleeting feeling of, I'm not making it with these people as far as them accepting me, but inside you're like glad that you didn't compromise those things.
It goes back to the saying that I think we've said for many years. I don't even know where it comes from anymore at this point because we've said it for so long, but people of integrity expect to be believed and then when they're not, they let time prove them right, right? It's just one of those things that as we continue down the path, if we continue doing the right things internally, eventually, like you said, externally, it does come to light or does show in our interactions with others or day-to-day activities or whatever. So I think integrity is a pretty important one, as you were saying.
Well,
So I think go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, Jeff. I think what leads, we've kind of touched on it, but how do you know when your integrity is starting to slip? And I think there's a component of humility that comes in there, which is another characteristic of leadership, that you've got to be willing to accept that you're not all that in a bag of chips, but not in a degrading way, but in a way to say there's always room to grow. And then understanding, like you had said, we all have room to grow even in the integrity component. Understanding that allows you to be truthful with yourself as well, so that you're not deceiving yourself into thinking, no, I have got it all figured out.
Oh, it sounded like you were just, we're going to keep
Sorry.
going there.
Yeah,
So, yeah, exactly. So the humility thing is it can be a difficult thing because a lot of times those places that we need to grow, we don't always see them, right? So, and I think that's an important thing. We could tie this into another leadership characteristic that I think is really important is having being able to be teachable, and that comes with being humble. That comes with having accountability and mentorship, and being open to having people say, "Hey, listen, if there's something I can tell you that's going to help you grow, but it might hurt your feelings a little bit. Would you want to know?" And you got to be like, well, if that have that trustworthiness with that person, that's really important to be open to that, right? And go, you know what? I want to hear it because it's going to help me grow in the long run. And I've had many people that have sat down and they've said, hey, just tell me where I need to change and tell me how I need to grow. You can't hurt my feelings. And the truth is you can. even when they say that, you got to be really careful that you got the right relationship in that person, and you have to be this way. If you're in the right state of mind to understand that, hey, you know what, I'm growing, God's helped me grow through this. I know I'm not perfect. I'll never be perfect, and someone's going to see something in my life that they need to approach me on, then I need to be open to listening to it.
Yeah, and I think going back to the topic of, people's feelings do get hurt. And even for people that even have tight relationships sometimes, right, we kind of all instinctually know the things that we are good and not good at. We kind of know where we're slipping up and where we're really exceeding. We all have gifts and we all have weaknesses. That's just, part of the human condition. And when we start hitting on those weaknesses, I think it can rub on a wrong spot pretty easily. So I completely agree with what Terry is saying right there, is because it's extremely important how we go about talking about some of those things, because weaknesses hurt.
Yeah.
And but having that, those teachable moments where we can, open our hearts and our minds to the possibility of growing, so we can hear those is also just as important.
Yeah, especially when you're working on being better and trying to do better and trying to improve or grow in an area that you haven't grown in, and then all of a sudden someone's saying, hey, I think you got to kind of be careful in this situation or in this area, whatever, because they see something in you and you're like, darn it, I've been trying so hard. It can be a tough thing to handle. But thank goodness we have people in our lives that are willing to share with us, willing to help us grow, right? So I think we've all done that with each other to some extent too. So I know we've had conversations where we just sat down and said, hey, let's fix this, or let's change this, or this is bugging me, and that kind of stuff. So, but that makes strong relationships in the long run. So,
but I think that's actually a really good point, right? Because if the relationship is solid, and even if it hurts a little bit, and the other person's intention are in the right place, that little bit of conflict between people generally always strengthens the relationship and doesn't hurt the relationship long term when it's taken in the right light. So a lot of times, even when we find ourselves in those situations where we're in those teachable moments, coming alongside someone, but keeping that in the back of our minds, that even if we have a little bit of conflict, we know the relationship is strong enough to be able to push through it, and the relationship is almost always stronger at the end when we're willing to push through those hard times. So that's even why addressing some of the issues sometimes, even if it's always not comfortable, can be extremely important.
Well, one thing I've observed, having especially watched you two, and you guys are fantastic at doing that, is you're both very wise at knowing when to do it versus when not to do it. When to let it go versus, no, this is something that is actually critical for us to be able to move forward. And that's something I think that is embodied in a leader as well, is being able to assess a situation and address when do I pounce versus when do I stay and observe in any situation, but particularly with relationships. When you think about it, most of them are very wise with who they keep as company, and then they're also wise with what type of conversations and topics they discuss with different company for various reasons. And that comes with, with the goal of serving both parties, right? You want that relationship to be strengthened, so you're purposeful with the words that you choose, the topics that you bring up, and when.
Yeah, definitely. So I think one of the things that I think we would all agree upon for a leadership characteristic is hunger, right? And I think we would agree upon that because we've been involved with life leadership for so long and listening to those audios and hearing from those mentors and just being around that. And in the book Launching a Leadership Revolution, Orrin and Chris talk about that. That's the one characteristic that they came up with that really separates the leaders from everybody else who really is going to be a leader. And they basically kind of talk about that hunger, having that passion to learn and to grow and to make a difference, right, is so important, because you can have all these other different characteristics, and if you don't have the hunger to move on with it, right? And how many times have we? And you don't have to feel bad if you're not like chomping at the bit to claw and go as fast as you can all the time, but you got to have that in your life in some areas, because how many times have you been hungry for something, but then that hunger only lasts for a little while, right? And so you kind of weighing off on your approach towards different things. We've all had those things in our lives. So I think you need some of that hunger for whatever you're striving for.
Well, I think a good example, as we talk on that, is just what we're doing here with these videos. How long has this been in the making? These types of L&D, Leave No Doubt videos, the brand, the website, the blog, all of that. We've been talking about it for 3, 4, 5 years, and we just started it
several months ago. Really started doing anything. I mean, I think we first got the website up a year ago, and then started really, putting the time behind making these videos and getting the paperwork done, right? And it's stuff that we've always, wanted to do and talked about, but we had to get over a little bit of that inertia of that hunger of really, getting out here. If we say this is what we want to do, now we got to go back to the integrity piece and say, well, we said we were going to do this. We actually need to go ahead and do it. I think even these videos are a good example of both, probably a lot of good, but also a little bit of bad, even along the way, some procrastination and not having some of that hunger, but then getting to the point where we can do a lot of these in these types of videos and getting that hunger. And now, I mean, I enjoy working with these two clowns, which is how it feels. I should really two fine gentlemen, and then you put the clowns.
Well, I'll take it as a compliment.
And I really do mean that.
Josh thought you were going to say even something worse.
Yeah. Oh, really? Well, not worse. And I really do mean that in a fun light. I mean, if you spent the first 20 minutes with us in the room here trying to get prepped for this, it's really a thing. Maybe at some point in the future we will post some of that footage, because we do have some of that.
Some of it will never be posted.
Some of it will never be posted, but some of it. Just going down there and going down these paths of, if we say we're going to do something, do it, and then having that hunger, to drive it to completion.
I think you got a good point there, Jeff, when you're talking about the leadership characteristics is being surrounded by the right people. And I know we're going to talk about community in a different video, but having the right people around you, because when you talk about like how long it's took to build this thing or get this thing off the ground, we should have been able to do it a lot quicker, but we do have different strengths, right? So, Josh, obviously, he set up the website and everything like that, which we probably would have muddled around even longer.
Yeah, another year probably.
He's fantastic with that. You're great at staying focused. You've got an incredible focus to you, which I am super jealous of, because I have total lack of focus, right? Which you probably frustrates the heck out of you. But I appreciate it. So, but by even coming here today, you mentioned it. Was it yesterday or the day before? And I was like, well, pretend you knew about that. So, which was in my calendar, but I just never look at the calendar. I should do that. But so I think having the right people around you, and I mean, I'm sure I have some sort of benefit I bring to the group.
Absolutely.
And no one knows what it is yet.
Well, I was just going to wait for you to stop talking, and then I would tell everyone.
Oh.
That is exact reaction I wanted. Perfect. And Terry does a really good job of grounding our group.
Say groveling.
I did not say groveling. Grounding our group. Terry has this.
Please watch this video.
Oh boy! I don't know if I'm gonna have to edit that out or not. We'll see. Now I totally lost my line of thought.
Good job of grounding.
Grounding.
Grounding the group.
Grounding the group.
Grounding the
Grounding the
He
group.
has this wisdom around this whole leadership topic, and the way that he can present things and bring some of the logic in can really challenge our thinking. Because one of my issues that I know that I have to continually work on is everything for me is just a nail, right? Because I am just a hammer. I want to just, because of that focus, I just sometimes lose the relationship aspect to it. And Terry does a really good job of really focusing us back in on that relationship and bringing in a lot of that those people skills and those reminders that why we're in this together. He does that long-term vision stuff very, very well.
Yeah, I think Josh. I don't know if you've ever felt like this, but I know you have, and I probably have too, right? So as we've been doing this, there's probably times. In fact, I think you said it a little bit earlier. I'm going to do all these by myself.
I did say that.
I've had that thought too a couple times. Like, man, if I could just do this by myself, right? And I don't know if you've had that thought yet or not, but.
But it would never get done.
It would never. It wouldn't be the same, right? Because it's good to have a hammer sometimes. It's really good to have a hammer.
Yes.
It's really good to have someone that says, "Hey, put the hammer away for a minute." Right? So, and then have someone to observe it, so that so there's a witness in the lawsuit.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, I think having the right community around you, the right people around you, the right balance, and then I guess I would, tail off of that dovetail, is that the word?
Yeah.
Dovetail?
So no, that wasn't.
As long as we're not pigeonholed.
I'm getting my bird metaphors. We got two of them with one stone there.
Yeah.
But friendship, I think, is a key quality of a leadership characteristic, right? And fostering those friendships so that you can have, so you can accomplish something and at the same time have a lot of fun and do it with people you enjoy being with. So.
Well, I think that's one thing that you've definitely made sure that, as well-rounded of a leader as you are, you've made sure that we've included fun and that friendship component. I think it's so easy, especially if you look at, not to bash on corporate America, but there's not exactly conventions that you go to where you learn about how to have a whole lot of fun. They talk about bringing fun into your team meeting and whatnot, but when it comes to actually applying that and living it out, I mean, we're not faking the fun that we're having up here. This is just genuine fun. Well, I'm not.
No.
And that's something that if you can foster that as a leader, you're going to get all of the other things that come with that. The friendship component, obviously, but it'll help. Everything just bonds and melds together.
Yeah, it brings out personalities and people's kind of uniqueness, and that can be a lot of fun. I did not mean to pun that. I will cut that out. Now I completely lost where I was going. Save me.
All right. I think you're talking about how when you do have those relationships, that all the different relationships does foster an environment that can be entertaining and challenging and fun and silly and goofy, but at the same time being able to stay focused and get something done too. So
and it's
important.
I found it to be incredibly powerful that you guys don't try to hammer me into a round peg as a square hole.
That's not normally how that metaphor works,
No.
Josh.
It's going really well. But yeah.
That's you, Josh.
That's me. You guys have allowed me to be comfortable being the
square hole
goon
round
that I
peg,
am. Yes. And I would have taken that really much more seriously than I should.
Good point, Josh. You have fun editing this, Jeff. But
I will have
so,
fun
Jeff, as we kind of wrap up this leadership characteristic talk, what would be your closing statements?
I don't know. I was interviewing a witness here.
Yeah.
Was not prepared for that question.
Just kind of wrap up with leadership characteristics in general.
Yeah, so as you can see, we threw out a whole bunch of different buzzwords here as we talk about leadership in general. I mean, I think we could probably if we sat here for 45 minutes, we could probably make a list of 100 of them.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them might, mean the same, but the ones we've talked about here today, the integrity and character, humility, teachable, those types of things are extremely important. Because if we don't start a lot of times with that right heart, which is what a lot of those things get at, it's extraordinarily difficult to do leadership if we don't have a heart for people and the Christian faith, a heart for Christ. It's really difficult to do leadership. Mm-hmm. In general, because if you're only thinking of yourself, that's the antithesis of leadership. It's the exact opposite. It doesn't really work. So it's why we hit on a lot of those more soft type skill things within leadership, because there's all kinds of other stuff we go into, perseverance and courage, and those are all some words, and they're all also a part of leadership. But I think we're missing the heart of the issue if we don't really talk about some of those, integrity and humility and being teachable and hunger. Those are all heart-related topics.
Yeah, so in my kind of wrap up to that, and Josh, you can give your little piece too here, but I think that as we talk about all those things, like you mentioned, we're throwing out all these words and we're kind of talking about them superficially, not really getting in depth with them. But how do you do that? How do you do those? How do you employ those leadership characteristics in your life? And I really think, like you just talked about, the Christian faith, Jeff, is one, you got to be in a walk with the Lord and reading the Word and figuring out how He wants to apply those in your life. And then two, I think you can meditate on those words a little bit. What do they mean to you? What is integrity and hunger and humility and character and integrity? What do they mean to you? And write some stuff out on that. I think we've all done that through an affirmation or through a lot of whiteboarding stuff that we've done. What does it really mean? And then the third thing is, I think that you got to surround yourself in that media, right? You got to listen to the right kind of things that you're putting in your head. So I know a lot of people listen to the radio all the time, but you know what? It's fun to listen to music, but there's a lot of times that we get into just different podcasts or different educational things or different sermons from pastors, right? Putting the right stuff in, reading the right types of books, and then being around the right type of people. I think it's just really important. It's how you foster a lot of those leadership characteristics in your life.
Yeah.
What they said.
There we go. Well, awesome. Well, thanks for the talk, guys.
Yeah.
I'm with Josh, Jeff, and I'm Terry. Say goodbye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.